There are, I think, very few decisions in life that carry the sheer weight and just complexity of choosing between the known, the stable long-term marriage and the possibility of a passionate new love. It's a defining human crossroads. And it's one that, well, statistically, is incredibly common.
It truly is. And when you strip away all the tabloid drama from it, what you find in our sources, the clinical research, the psychological patterns, is a surprisingly structured challenge.
Right, yeah.
This isn't just about chemistry or, betrayal.
Right.
It's about navigating these enormous psychological, emotional, and logistical barriers.
And that's really the mission for this deep dive. We're trying to move past the raw emotion and just dissect the patterns that create the situation in the first place. Yeah. The enormous friction that prevents a clean break.
Yeah.
And the surprisingly limited realistic options that are available once you actually get to that inflection point. We want to give you the framework for understanding the why and how of this difficult choice.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You are doing important work.
Exactly. We're looking at the forces of, say, inertia versus the pull of novelty.
Yeah.
And how the circumstances of a decaying marriage often predispose someone to see a new person not just as a thrill, but as a potential solution. A solution to a really existential problem.
Okay, let's unpack this. So let's start at the beginning. The landscape of the existing marriage. Because the sources are very clear on this crisis, it rarely just explodes out of nowhere. It starts with a slow, creeping decline, and it often leads to a situation that feels less like a marriage and more like, well, functional cohabitation.
Yeah, roommates.
When we look at the data on these long-term relationships, the defining characteristic isn't always, constant screaming matches. So often, the crisis point is reached through just apathy and silence.
That's the critical distinction. It's not just the presence of conflict. It's the absence of emotional investment. The research points to really specific forms of decay.
Like what?
Well, the lack of attention, which just feels like emotional neglect, or the emergence of indifference or even subtle rudeness, that coldness that seeps in. And then, of course, the big one, the decline or total disappearance of intimacy.
You realize that for years, the emotional tank has just been running on fumes, maybe completely empty. And that emotional emptiness, that vacuum, is what sets the stage for everything that follows.
Right.
It's this deep-seated craving for affirmation, for being seen, for feeling vital again.
And vacuums, psychologically speaking, they can't be sustained. They have to be filled. And this is precisely when the catalyst arrives, the new person.
And they almost always emerge from a pretty predictable environment, right? A professional setting, a close social circle, somewhere with regular interaction.
Exactly. And this figure, whether they do it consciously or not, they fill the exact emotional gaps the long-term partner has left wide open.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the contrast. On one side, you've got years of accumulated grievances, unmet expectations, practical stress.
And on the other, you have someone who is attentive, who validates your feelings, offers support, seems to understand you effortlessly.
Yeah.
And just brings that high-octane passion back into your life. The sources consistently highlight this barrage of compliments, gifts, the sheer intoxicating novelty of it all.
Okay, but I have to push back a little on that idea of them understanding the assignment. Is it always a manipulative strategy? Or is it just, novelty bias at work? I mean, the new person is only interacting with a version of you who is temporarily free from all the baggage of home life, right?
That is the analytical key. The new man is experiencing the woman solely as a source of positive emotion and excitement. And she's experiencing him without the burden of domestic reality. No shared finances, no carpools, no arguments about chores.
It's a purely curated, high-reward environment.
Exactly. The attention feels effortless because it has no real-world friction.
Yeah.
And that distinction is so crucial when you're analyzing the comparison she's making in her head.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because our sources highlight a pretty profound distinction in how this scenario often plays out based on gender.
They do.
While men might view an extramarital relationship as like a temporary silo, a private distraction, the data shows that for women, the lover is often viewed not as a distraction, but as a potential replacement for the husband.
And that changes the entire calculus. For her, the affair is often an evaluation of a potential new life path. It's a survival mechanism, really, a test of viability.
Wow.
The moment she frames him as a replacement, the existential clock starts ticking on the marriage. It's no longer just a secret. It's a possible future being road tested.
That shift from secret excitement to viable future, that's the moment the real difficulty begins.
Yeah.
Because wanting the new path and actually taking the new path are two wildly different things.
Completely different things.
If the decision were just about emotional fulfillment, I mean, the path would be simple. But the
Yeah.
journey from an unhappy marriage to a completely new life is just,
Yeah.
it's absolutely littered with these gravitational pulls and roadblocks.
It is. Our sources highlight 6 severe obstacles that make leaving so profoundly difficult, even when the passion is undeniable.
Okay, where should we start?
We can start with the internal and social barriers, which are incredibly heavy. The first one involves these intense moral and ethical dilemmas.
Right.
When infidelity happens, it often contradicts the deep-seated personal values of the person involved. That conflict generates tremendous cognitive dissonance.
The psychological stress of holding two conflicting beliefs at once. I'm a good person,
Yeah.
and I'm doing this thing I believe is wrong.
Exactly. And that internal battle is exhausting. It prevents clear thinking. And the moment that battle escalates, it slams right into the external weight of family responsibility.
Oh, yeah. When children are involved, the decision immediately shifts. It's not about personal happiness anymore. It's about the potential trauma and complete restructuring of the family unit.
It's an exponential compounding factor. The perceived damage to the children becomes the primary anchor holding everything in place. Even if the marriage is dead, the shared family structure is still standing.
And tearing it down for new love feels incredibly selfish and painful.
And on top of that, you can't ignore the wide net of societal and external pressure. It's not just the immediate family, it's the community, the in-laws, the shared history.
You face judgment, questions, the complete loss of a shared social identity. Friends might take sides, family might disapprove vehemently.
It's not just a private decision, it's a public restructuring that forces you to justify your actions to the world. And honestly, it's often enough to force people back into a miserable but socially validated status quo.
So that covers the more abstract hurdles. Now let's talk about the tangible and the psychological. And the first is often the most binding: financial dependence and complexity.
This is a massive gravitational force. For many, breaking the financial ties of a long marriage, especially if one spouse stepped back from a career, means losing the safety net entirely.
Even if both are working, the sheer complexity of dividing assets, properties, pensions, I mean, it requires major effort, expense, professional intervention. It creates instant vulnerability.
Which perfectly feeds into the next obstacle, the fear of change and idealization. You are leaving a known, familiar life, even if it's predictable and unhappy, for a completely unknown future. That is profoundly daunting.
And that fear is heightened by this huge psychological trap of idealization, right?
Yes, as we discussed, the lover is perfect because he only exists in that curated, low-friction bubble of the affair. He hasn't been tested by the bills, the illness, the boredom, the stress of the mundane.
So the fear is that once you introduce him to the full reality of your life, that ideal image will just shatter.
And you're left with neither the security of the marriage nor the passion of the romance. You've invested everything to get to the new path, only to find it's paved with the same compromises you just ran away from.
Which leads us to maybe the most critical uncertainty of all, the real linchpin of the decision.
Yeah.
The lover's true intentions.
This is where the emotional risk peaks. The woman has to confront this critical uncertainty. Is this man truly ready for the commitment, the permanence, the responsibility of building a new life? Or was he just enjoying the thrill of the affair?
She has to risk complete upheaval.
The financial, social, and emotional cost of divorce, only to face the very real possibility that the person she left for will not or cannot follow through. The risk of abandonment is terrifying. It makes inaction feel safer than radical change.
So given all these obstacles, the financial complexity, the social fallout, the psychological traps, a person at this crossroads pretty quickly realizes that she doesn't have endless paths.
No, she has to make a choice. And the path of avoidance, or attempting evasion, is what the source calls trying to have both.
Which is noted as less common among women, more typical for men caught in this dilemma, but it's still an option people try to grasp.
And it is the least realistic path. It fails almost universally. Maintaining parallel relationships just. It requires impossible emotional and logistical bandwidth. The tension, the secrecy, the constant need for performance, it inevitably leads to mental fatigue and breakdown.
It's an emotional nightmare.
It is. It disappoints everyone involved, including the person trying to sustain it. The dual life simply cannot withstand the pressure forever.
Okay, so if having both is unsustainable, The individual is forced to confront the two realistic choices. And it's a stark binary that demands brutal, radical honesty.
Choice one is stay with the husband. But, and the source is emphatic on this cannot be just inertia. Staying demands a clear-eyed approach. You have to decide if the familiarity, the stability, the identity truly outweighs the emotional deficit.
And if you do choose to stay,
You have to commit to one of two sub-options. Either you accept the current distant situation exactly as it is without resentment, or, and this is the vital part, you commit to a real effort to restore the relationship and actively bring back the lost warmth.
and that last part isn't a wish, it's a radical undertaking. It's like the effort of a second marriage, maybe more.
It is. It requires counseling, yes, but more importantly, it requires radical honesty about the void that was created in the first place. It means redefining roles, setting aside years of grievances, and working harder than you did in the first year of dating.
The alternative is just staying and letting the emotional vacuum reform.
Guaranteeing another crisis down the line. You have to rebuild the foundation, not just paint the walls.
And then there's choice two, the high-risk, high-reward option. Leave for the lover.
This is the total high-stakes leap. It means completely uprooting your life, accepting all the social judgment and financial complexity we detailed, breaking those old ties, and taking a chance on new love.
It's the path of maximum volatility.
It takes immense courage, but it also carries the highest potential for catastrophic disappointment if the lover proves to be that idealized fantasy who just can't handle reality.
Which brings us to the ultimate wisdom the sources provide, and it's all about control.
Yes, it is paramount that the woman takes control and makes the conscious decision. You can decide for yourself, or you can wait for the inevitable. The husband discovering the affair and leaving you.
Or the lover deciding he's not ready and abandoning you.
Exactly. Letting one of the men make the choice, or letting circumstance decide for you, means you relinquish all agency. Taking control of the situation and making a conscious, informed decision based on a deep dive into your own true desires is always the wiser path, regardless of which option you choose.
So what does this all mean? We've looked at the complete pattern, the emotional vacuum of the marriage, the catalytic arrival of the attentive, idealized lover, the massive pile of internal and external obstacles from cognitive dissonance to financial complexity, and then the realization that you have to choose one of two paths, either rebuild or move forward.
The core takeaway is self-governance. To successfully navigate this crossroads, you have to listen past the thrilling, temporary noise of the new romance. You need to understand your true long-term desires and evaluate the potential partner not on the affair's bubble,
Right?
but based on their capacity for sustained, boring, practical life partnership. The intoxicating high of the affair will fade. You need to build a life on the substance that remains.
And if we follow the source material on the necessity of taking conscious control, especially for those considering option one, stay with the husband, the mandate is it's so clear. You have to make a real effort to restore the lost warmth. So if staying is truly the conscious choice, what tangible first step beyond just wishing, and maybe even before announcing a decision, is required to genuinely attempt that restoration? Is it radical honesty about the affair, or is it radical honesty about the vacuum that led to it? A choice built on effort and awareness, not simple inertia, is the only way you move forward without repeating the pattern. Think about that effort. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to overcome betrayal, break toxic cycles, take control of your relationship choices, read How to Deal with a Love Triangle. The link is below the video.